people could do much more with this than what we've been able to knock together here for you very briefly. But here we are at the top floor of the Lukhang. That's called the North Wall. That glass case was installed by the locals there in the last 10 years. It replaced, in an attempt to protect what you see here, the North Wall of the Lukhang. You notice the yogis up top here. That's a particular teaching, and they all have captions for yoga. But down here, you notice there are no captions. So this is all an oral tradition. The yogas associated with these practices are not written down. You can only receive them from a teacher. The nadi channels in the center of the body are a big practice. It's part of what you do with yoga. When you do the physical yogas, you open the channels in the body. So when you approach these murals with a practitioner, with a Buddhist monk, with a yogi, they have all kinds of stories to tell you about all of these things. I believe someone was talking earlier about intangible heritage. The storytelling aspect of these walls is immense. These were the PowerPoint presentations of ancient Tibet. This is where you received initiations and were given guidance. It was exactly, things that are not shown anywhere else in Tibet are illustrated in these murals, including the chakra, the system of the nadis, this world mountain, the different types of Buddhas, the different type of meditations, the mind as a crystal. Every single thing you see here has a story. I hope that once we have this digital archive, my goal in the rest of my life, now that I've had these 300 murals, is to convince the world that we need together to shoulder the responsibility of collecting this information about what all of this means. Tibetans have a certain layer of knowledge about this. Art historians in the West and in China, many people have different levels of knowledge about what these murals mean. My job, as I said at the beginning, I'm a photographer. I'm not a curator. I'm not a museum director. I'm not an institution. I'm an individual obsessed with Tibetan murals, much to my wife's sometimes regret. But this is just going to show you briefly the level of resolution that in some cases we have been able to achieve. It's pretty remarkable what the artists were able to do, and when you're in the room, you can't really appreciate everything that's there. There's so much about the techniques, the lines, how they were drawn, what order they were drawn in relationship to one another. There's so many things embedded, so much metadata embedded here that it's really very difficult to, really very difficult. So we're going to cut this short a little bit. Let me leap forward so you can see a bit more from this mural. And here's another mural from the Lukhang. And yet more murals from the 16 murals of the Lukhang. All of these are practices. That's a breath yoga that man was doing. These are very specific practices. That's the top floor. And then now there's one more. This is the West Wall. Again, more of the meditation techniques. As we look at this, I want you to understand as I close that there are many different levels of meanings depending upon the mural. There's the whole art historian, curator thing that we do in the West. But there's also what the Tibetans think about this. There's their history with it, and the way that they come into these temples and offer money to these, and there's the belief level. You have believers come in for whom these are objects of devotions, and they don't know anything about this content at all. And but as a child, having that belief level, later in life, they go through the knowledge level where they're taught things about this content. And then, finally, a few people actually take this knowledge and transform themselves with spiritual practices. And those are the people who then turn around and paint the paintings. So it's a very interesting process. as part of intangible heritage. It was clearly described in the earlier program. So I don't want to take too much more of your time because we do all want to get together this evening. But let me just say in closing that, again, with the technology that's now available to us, it's possible for a committed individual to document a chapter of world history that has not, of world art history that has not been previously documented. Yes, I'm sure with a team of people and much equipment, I could have gotten better color fidelity, or I could have gotten greater resolution. But the fact is, I got 250 murals from Tibet in the last 4 years. And that's now the largest single archive of Tibetan murals in the world. This is the period we're living in. It's a momentous era. There's much before us. We can't answer all the questions about originality, about authorship. Am I a digital artist? I mean, when the Metropolitan Museum wants to look at these images, they're like, Tom, should we be showing these to the Asian art curator or the photography curator or to the... And I'm going, yes, because it's cross field. This is something new that's emerging. Thank you so much for your attention, and I've really enjoyed listening to all of you. I've learned so much, and I look forward to hearing more from all of you.
I think that we could have a few questions while Professor Eid is getting ready for his presentation.
What happens to people who are familiar with these works that are intended to be looked at from a distance or to be looked at up or across? What happens when the work comes to them closely or the image is magnified? Does it change the way in which they appreciate it? And do you think it's intended to do that?
Intention, no, obviously not. It was intended to be where it is, just like so much else of our world. But just like I was intended to be in New Orleans today. But but the fact is, when you show these life-size images to monks, to practitioners, the question you just raised doesn't cross their mind. They walk up to the wall and begin to talk. Well, now, this means this. And did you know about this yoga? And I'm saying to them, but this is the first time. I mean, I've removed it from context. No interest. For the practitioners, and the issue that comes up, of course, one of the things they're very concerned with is, now, Thomas, you have to treat this mural with respect. It's now a sacred object. You can't step on this. You can't, put this up, and you laugh, but it's very serious for them. I have to store the murals up high and keep them clean and be sure that they're never burnt. They're very worried about those things. There are traditional concerns, and there are a lot of issues that come up with this.
Thank you.
What should happen to this archive? What is your vision? What are your plans?
Well, now that I've captured this archive, I would like to see it curated by knowledgeable people in a hypertextual way. I mean, I imagine bringing people from various experts, whether they were Tibetan or Western art experts, bringing them to that and collecting their commentary, so that then over time you could build up a multi-layered commentary on these murals. Without the commentary, these murals are sort of out of context. We really need both the Tibetan context with them, as well as contemporary art history context, as well as the techniques that they're working on at Dunhuang to analyze the inks and the paints and how this was all produced. So there's many layers of context that need to be added to this. Thank you so much.